Hi, and welcome back to PatientRx. I'm Jessica Krauser, and I do not have Tina Volb with me at the moment, but I do have a guest here with us, Michael Rowe. Hello, Michael.
Hello.
Michael is with Two Labs Pharma Services, and he focuses on DSCSA and serialization. We are still at Assembia, and we are in the SiriusXM studios at the Wynn in Las Vegas. So welcome, Michael.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited about this.
I'm so excited that you're here. So Michael and I actually work together and have for years. And you took on this DSCSA role. How many years ago was it?
It'll be 6 years this July. I've been with Two Labs.
Okay.
And it's been a long journey even before that where I got involved in DSCSA.
Yeah. So I remember you first explaining DSCSA to me. And I was like, okay, that sounds like a lot of things that I don't know or understand or knew about the knew about products. But what I want to talk to you today, though, about is, again, because PatientRx, we focus on patients and what manufacturers are doing or what they need to do to make sure that, patients are thought of first. So let's talk about DSCSA's role in overall patient safety.
Sure.
What does that even mean? And then we can maybe backtrack on some stuff.
Sure. Yeah. So the DSCSA, it's kind of an alphabet soup a little bit. It stands for the Drug Supply Chain Security Act.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a federal law that was intended to create a national framework to how to keep illegitimate counterfeit drugs out of the U.S. supply chain.
And when did this start?
Well, if you look back in history, a lot of what was happening in the late 90s, early 2000s was kind of a proliferation of these kind of drug schemes where basically people were counterfeiting drugs and going through these shell companies. They were creating fake wholesalers and they were distributing drugs that people thought were legitimate.
Okay.
A lot of this was like the Viagra counterfeiting that was going on. A whole book was written by Catherine Ebon, Dangerous Doses, and it brought it to the national limelight and attention, where patients were getting harmed by these illicit drugs that were not legitimate. So the federal response came in to create kind of a national standard because every state was starting to pass their own set of laws, if you will, and it just wasn't feasible because now you've got packaging for different products for different states and different requirements.
Oh gosh,
it would have been bad. So that's where the Congress stepped in. It was actually a law signed by President Obama in 2013.
Okay, so now, but isn't there still counterfeit situations going on today?
So yeah, even with legislation and even with improved technologies in the supply chain, there's still threats to our supply chain even to this day. There's recent examples. Back in 2021, there was a very large criminal case that came out of a fake HIV medicine that was being basically a buyback scheme was being developed where legitimate bottles of this HIV medicine were going back, and to see the photos of where these medicines were being tampered with, it's in someone's basement and garage, and they're filling it with rocks. They're filling it with Tylenol, fentanyl. I mean, and then trying to redistribute them and sell them back to a legitimate pharmacy. I was at a conference, and one of the representatives from the drug manufacturers was there, took the bottle, shook it, and said, "Sounds like there's real pills in here, right?" Opened up the lid. It was full of rocks.
Oh my gosh.
It came from the discovery of what they found. And so we're seeing a lot also with the GLP-1s, the Ozempic medications. There are actual public cases out right now where FDA is warning consumers and prescribers alike to look for certain batches that have been fabricated and they're not real.
How I mean, isn't that what this serialization is set up to do?
It is. I like to call the DSCSA or the serialization, it doesn't 100% prevent medicines from coming into the supply chain. What it does, though, is it creates a framework for a more proactive response when something does happen.
Oh.
So think about the serial number that's on these packages. that the drug manufacturers put on, like a VIN on your car or a serial number on your laptop. The idea is that when you see that serial number, you can then track its identity to say, this is a product I actually made, or no, it isn't. Is it a completely fail-safe solution? No. But the idea is that it creates some countermeasures to then say, okay, if there is a problem or we think we have a suspect issue, then you can more quickly address it. Like what happened with the recent example with Ozempic. It was something where a state board of pharmacy inspector got a call from a pharmacy. The pharmacy says this doesn't look right. They were able to use the serialization tools to go back to the manufacturer and say, we never made that product.
Wow.
Without even having to look at it.
Wow.
So I think a lot of the serialization tools are meant to help the industry respond to these issues. But I think at the end of the day, it's doing business with trusted people. If a deal sounds too good to be true, especially when it comes to pharmaceuticals, it's probably too good to be true. Buying pharmaceuticals only from a licensed pharmacy. Going on Facebook Marketplace is not a good place to get prescription medicines. Going to online pharmacies, some of them are licensed, but many of them can be difficult to know. So it's really important to only do business with people that you can trust. And that even goes all the way up the supply chain. Manufacturers only vetting and selling their drugs to legitimate people. Pharmacies, when they're purchasing the medicines, only going from with people that are fully licensed and allowed to deal with these businesses, these types of businesses. What we're seeing is that these shell companies are being stood up and they're faking their licensure, right? And so and they're coming up with these unique schemes, and they're calling themselves a redistributor. And it's really important to do business with people that are actually supposed to be in the supply chain.
That's scary.
It can be, but I think, again, as a patient, right, it's making sure you find a good source to get your medicines.
So is there anything that manufacturers need to do to, I don't know, ensure that their product is not part of those schemes? And is there, is there anything that you had to start, at Two Labs, you guys are doing differently now to address this?
Yeah, so I think with a lot of manufacturers, a lot of them were in what I call a build phase for compliance, right? They were building the new packaging, building the new serialization databases, connecting those databases to share that serial number data with your customers as they sell the product. So a lot of the manufacturers have been in a very much almost like an IT project build mode. And now that the deadlines are coming to full effect, a lot of manufacturers are saying, all right, we have these tools in place. I have to be equipped to respond to these issues immediately. Do I have the right processes documented? Do I have the right people trained on everything? It's been kind of, serialization's been kind of like, oh, another group has got it. What's changing and what we're advising manufacturers on is you have to have almost like a full, robust training program where adverse events is kind of something that the manufacturers, every employee within a pharma manufacturer gets trained on. If a patient calls in or someone calls in with an adverse event, hey, I took this medication, I developed in a rash that was unexpected. There are specific procedures that every employee at that company, even if you're at a pool party and someone tells you about hey, I took your medicine and it gave me a rash, you have to legally report that as part of your obligations as a manufacturer. The same sort of diligence is being put upon around these counterfeit medicines.
It's so interesting.
Well, and in many cases, those adverse events could be a sign of something that's going on. So there have been patients that have been hospitalized thinking, oh, I'm having an adverse reaction to this medicine, but it's actually because I bought it from a non-legitimate source. I bought this medicine and it had labeling, it looked from, a different country, but I took it anyways. It's like, please be careful. Please be careful.
Yeah. So how do you work with clients? What is your focus and your goal, or what are they expecting from you in terms of this?
Yeah. So I think a lot of what I'm doing with clients is really just education. A lot of it's just here's the full facet of all the regulations of the law. A lot of people call it the serialization law because it required serialization on packaging, and everyone was highly focused on that piece. Where I'm advising clients and doing a lot of education on, well, here's all the other provisions of the law that you have to comply with. Are your processes and how you onboard a new customer, have you looked at those? Did you look at that from a lens of, are you doing business with authorized trading partners, not redlining a price and negotiating that? Working with manufacturers and wholesalers as well to set up a lot of data infrastructure. So a lot of what happens in the US model is that there's a digital twin of data that moves with the physical product. So when a manufacturer sells a product, let's say to a wholesale distributor, they have to include on that delivery every single serial number that's part of that delivery. That way, then the wholesaler, when they receive it in, have specific processes to then go, hey, I ordered 100, and these are the 100 actual serial numbers you told me I was supposed to get. Here's what I got. And that can help identify, hey, is somebody trying to slot something in when they shouldn't? I'm working with a lot of manufacturers on developing those data pieces. There's a lot also happening around returns. I think a kind of an unknown secret within the pharmaceutical industry is that a lot of pharmacies will stock product just in time, maybe for a patient to come in and get that script filled, especially for high expensive medications. If that script doesn't get filled, that pharmacy doesn't want to eat the cost of that medication. They'll return it back. That happens around 2 to 3% of all drug sales in the US goes through like a returns process. And that's a potential area of weakness in the supply chain. That's around 62 million units of drugs are going back and being redistributed to a new pharmacy.
Oh, wow.
And so that's 60 million units that are being processed. It's important for companies to know, like, when I get those returns back, is it actually a legitimate product, or is somebody trying to insert something, get a return credit for a fake drug? So really looking at procedures around how you handle returns is really important.
I've always, and this is, I thought I saw something about it, but from a patient standpoint, when patients, like, I have so many medications in my cabinet, and it's because, with Parkinson's specifically, you can be on a certain regimen, and then 3 months later, or not 3 months always time, but like 6 months, a year, because it's a progressive disease, the medications are changing. So then I just have like bottles of stuff, maybe not the full prescription, but they're good to go pills. And it's like, I know so many people are always like, I wish I could just like give it back, and because it's like it's wasted, but that would be a whole headache.
That would make, again, it would produce opportunities for people to do nefarious things, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, what happened in that case with the HIV medicine, unfortunately, these bad actors preyed on people who were under a lot of financial stress.
Yeah.
So people that are HIV positive, they're taking this medicine to help treat their disease, being offered, hey, I'll give you cash for this bottle. And they targeted clinics that were handing out free or reduced medicines to then go to these people who are already in a world of hurt.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of them and saying, I'll give you cash for that bottle, to then use that as a template to copy, to then try and hurt other people with putting fake stuff in the bottle.
That is
so it's awful. And I think whenever there's weaknesses and opportunity, right? And so it comes down to a lot of medicines that are high value, or there's a high, demand for that. And so it's a factor of a couple things.
Is there any type of patient education? I mean, I know I've seen it, especially on the news recently with Ozempic, but is there any other type of patient education or watch outs that manufacturers should, be doing to proactively make aware the possibility and what to look for?
Yeah.
That exists?
So a lot of manufacturers today, on all of their packaging, as well as a lot of on their website materials, have hotlines for you to call, right? If you have an issue with your medication, if you have an adverse event, if you question the medicine, a lot of that is where a patient could go. This is where the lines are a little blurry from a legal perspective. The DSCSA, or the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, really governs how licensed operators in the supply chain are supposed to act, right? So a pharmacy has the legal right to investigate a suspect drug issue with the manufacturer. When it gets to patient level, in full transparency, the manufacturers, one, get very limited information from patients because sometimes they're like you, like, hey, I have a leftover packaging. I didn't get the original packaging. My pharmacy tore it down or reconfigured it for me. They don't necessarily know all of the right things to ask. So it does put a manufacturer on alert, like, hey, is this someone trying to be a bad actor and trying to get access to legitimate serial numbers to then copy, or is it a real patient issue? So I would encourage patients to really go to their pharmacist, their trusted pharmacist, because if they do have an issue, right, those pharmacies have, under the DSCSA, kind of legal rights to go back to a drug manufacturer or even the wholesaler they bought it from and say, hey, I need to ask a question about this product. I need to check the serial number. I need to check the other parts of the authenticity, because again, what we've seen in some of these cases is the counterfeiters are getting sophisticated where they make the serial number look really good.
Yeah.
They make the barcode look really good, but then when it comes to the actual manufacturing of the product, they cut corners.
Yeah.
Because they want to get it out as quickly and cheaply as possible to make the most amount of money.
I love uncovering stuff like this because it's so interesting that, you know, when you go about your day-to-day or at the manufacturer level, like, you know, they're going about, you know, their day-to-day and talking about serialization or making sure, like, you know, the packaging and all things that they don't, not every individual sees the impact to the patient or feels like they have an impact to the patient. This is like so clear to me of how, like, every aspect of what we do in pharma is directly impacts the patient, but it's just uncovering how.
Right.
And I think that makes it just so much more meaningful when people are doing the work that they do and and recognizing how important it is. So
it is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a compliance regulation that companies have to adhere by, right? They face legal penalties, fines, etc. So a lot of people wear it with that hat of, I just have to do this to check the box. But when you do sit down at the end of the day and say, what we're doing, hopefully we never have to enact, but we're building that infrastructure that when it does, when it's a loved one that's, you know, potentially we're preventing harm, it does make the world a difference. And so I'm incredibly proud of the work that we do at Two Labs for our clients. But at the end of the day, that work is really ultimately for a patient benefit that, if everything goes right, they never knew happened.
Right.
Like as a patient, you would never know that all these different checks happened before it got to my pharmacy.
Right.
But it's hopefully those types of things that makes you put faith in these companies are saying, hey, I'm trying to do the right thing to keep patients safe.
Yeah.
You know, again, I can't stress enough, you know, if you have questions as a patient around the authenticity of a drug, go to your pharmacy. They should be helping you. And as well, just also buy from legitimate sources. It's one of the ways to keep that from happening. Again, if a deal's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true. It's like if you saw a, you know, Louis Vuitton purse that was only, you know, $100. It might not be a real Louis Vuitton purse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So why take the risk when it comes to your health?
Exactly.
I mean, as you can attest, patient access. So I think it also reinforces, you know, patient access to these medications is also critical, because that's what's driving people to then find desperate ways.
Find other ways. Yeah.
So that's the challenging part about it.
Well, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
I'm sorry Tina couldn't be here. She was really, I know, she was...
Legal compliance, getting excited about that.
No, she really wanted to be here and check it out, but she'll have to just watch the podcast. But thank you so much for coming on, and I hope you enjoy the rest of Assembia.
Thank you.
And with that, we will see you next time. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you.